points with the smallest distance between them. Right. So these are given, and you have to match them. So this, if you see here, one is sorting is arranging a list. So one is A, and second is geometric problem, which is F, finding the pair of points from a set of points. That is geometric problem with the smallest distance. Then graph problem will be finding the shortest path between two nodes, and numerical problem will be finding the solution of a given set of linear equation. That will be numerical. Searching problem will be finding an item in set items, right? And string processing will be match a word in a paragraph. So this kind of a matching they are talking about, right? So you can read the questions which are given here. Then the next unit which they are talking about is asymptotic bounds. We have already just covered certain things in asymptotic notations and all that. They are again describing it in fully. So some useful mathematical functions and notations they are talking about. So function and notation. So here they are talking like where we use n, I, and r in the following sense. N is natural numbers or something like that. I don't know, integers they are talking about. R is a set of real numbers, right? So these notations are used in mathematics generally. Then summation and product. So if you want to suppose we are having a sequence of numbers from 1 to n, where n is an integer number, the finite sum of these sequences 1 plus 2 plus up to n, how we give them with sigma I is equal to 1 to n, like that we write, right? And I is equal to sigma I is equal to 1 to n. I is equal to 1 plus 2 plus up to n, which is equal to n into n plus 1 by 2, right? This is arithmetic series they are talking about. If you are saying square, sum of squares of the numbers up to n, so it is n into n plus 1, 2n plus 1 divided by 6. If it is cube, sum of cubes, so it is n square, n plus 1 square upon 4. So they are giving you summation arithmetic series. And if it is a product, so product is this pi symbol is used for the product, sigma is used for the sum, right? So I is equal to 1 to n. So 1 into 2 into n, so that is represented. That means the product of I, right? Then function. For two given sets A and B, a rule F which associates with each element of A unique element of B is called a function from A to B. So if function F is a function from a set A to a set B, we denote the fact by F implies A implies B. F such that A implies B. For example, the function F which associates the cube of a real number with a given real number x can be written as fx is equal to x cube, like this. So we'll write the function as this: fx cube of real numbers. So fx is equal to x cube. Suppose the value of x is 2, there f maps to 2 to 8, right? Because 2's cube is 8. Then floor function is there. Let x be a real number. The floor function denoted by x maps each real number x to the integer, which is the greatest of all integers less than or equal to x. So 3.5 is given. So you have 3 minus 3.5. So all the floor functions is given. A floor function is denoted as this. So this is hyphen is also put here before the value, right? After and before, maps each real numbers x to the integer which is greatest of all integers less than or equal to x. That is what they are talking about. Then ceiling function is there. Let x be a real number. Ceiling function is denoted as x maps each real number x to the integer which is the least of all integers greater than or equal to x, right? 3.5 is equal to 4, minus 3.5 is equal to minus 2, 8 is equal to 8. So that is what they are talking about. So 3.5, if you are saying floor, so floor means this integer part it will give, that is 3. right? The smaller part, integer smaller part will be given. Minus 3.5 will be treated as minus 4, and 8 will be treated as 8 only. And ceiling function 3.5 will be taken as 4, rounding off. Here you are doing rounding off. And minus 3.5 will be minus 2, right? And 8 will be 8 only. That is what floor and ceiling function is. Here you are not you are rounding off to the smaller number. Here you are rounding off to a larger number, right? So logarithms are there. Logarithms are important mathematical tool which are widely used in analysis of algorithm. The following important properties of logarithm can be derived from the properties of the exponents. So in general, the logarithms of any number x is the power to which another number a called the base must be raised to produce x. Both a and x are positive numbers. So they are formulating for n some important formulas related to algorithm. They have given log a bc is equal to log a b plus log a c, and log a b to the power n is equal to n log a b. A here means the base of the log function, can be 10, can be whatever, log 10, log whatever. Then log b a is equal to log a b, right? And log a 1 by b is equal to minus log b a, log b a. And log b a b is equal to 1 by log b a, and a log b c is equal to c log b a. But these are the formulas in use for the logarithmic, but we'll not be using them. But they are mentioning the different formulas which are there. Then modular arithmetic or mod function is also there. Modular function or mod function returns a remainder after a number called dividend is divided by another number called the divisor. So we know that mod function. In programming we use that, like b mod n, 42 mod 11 gives you what remainder? 9 is the remainder. It gives, mod function gives you the remainder. That is what they are talking about. So there some mathematical expectations are also there. In average case analysis of algorithm, we need the concept of mathematical expectation. In order to understand the concept better, let us consider an example. Suppose the students of MCA who completed all the courses in the year 2005 had the following distribution marks: 0 to 20%. Percentage of students who scored in the range are 8. 20 to 40%, 20. 40 to 60%, 57. 60 to 80, 9. 80 to 100, 6. Right. If a student is picked up randomly from the set of students under consideration, what is the percentage of marks expected of such a student? So they are saying these are the expected number of students whose percentage of number of students according to their percentage marks in MCA. But how will we pick if we pick a random student, then how will we know what is the percentage of marks expected of such a student? So after scanning the table given above, we intuitively expect the student to score around 40 to 60%, because that is the because it has a maximum number of students here first, right? Because more than half of the students have scored marks in and around this class, right? Assuming that the marks within a class are uniformly scored by the students in the class, the above table may be approximated by following more concise table. So 10, 8. So they are giving you that. They are taking a mid from 0 to 20. Suppose 10 is the average they have taken. So 10% is 8. 30% among 20 to 40. 30% are 20. 50% are 57. 70% are 9, and 90% are 6. So as explained earlier, we expect a student picked up randomly to score around 50%, because more than half of the students have scored marks around 50%. So this informal idea of expectation may be formalized by giving to each percentage of marks weight in proportion to the number of students scoring the particular percentage of marks in the above table. So thus we assign weight 8 divided by 100 to score 10%. 8 out of 100 students score on the average 10% marks, 20 out of 100 to score 30%, and so on. right? So expected percentage of marks is equal to 10 into 8 by 100, 10% of marks, and plus 30 into 20 by 100, 50 into 57 by 100, plus 70 into 9 by 100, plus 90 into 6 by 100, which gives us 47, right? So the final calculation of expected marks of 47 is roughly equal to our intuition of the expected marks, according to our intuition, to be around 50. So 47 are the marks they are talking about, between 40 to 60. So 47 are the marks which we have expected percentage of marks of that student, whatever student we pick up from that. So this is what mathematical expectation is calculated, right? Then mathematical expect for a given set S of items that led to each item one of n values, say v1 v2 up to vn, be associated. Let the probability of the occurrence of an item with value vi bpi. If an item is picked up at random, then its expected value ev is given by ev is equal to sigma I is equal to 1 to n. Sigma means sum. Pi vi is equal to p1 into v1 plus p2 into v2 plus up to p1 pn into vn, which is this this one which they are talking about, right? Probability into the value. That is what mathematical expectation formula is. Then they are talking about the principle of induction. So induction plays an important role to many facets of data structure and algorithms. In general, all correctness opinions are based on induction principle. So mathematical induction is a method of writing a mathematical proof, generally to establish that a given statement is true for all natural numbers. So initially, we have to prove that the first statement in the infinite sequence of statement is true, and then proving that if any one statement in the infinite sequence of statement is true, then so is the next statement. So mathematical induction, we are proving certain statement, right? So if we check that for one particular instance the statement is true, then for the other also it will be true. That is how we prove mathematical induction. So therefore the method consists of the following three major steps. Induction base: in this stage we verify or establish the correctness of the initial. So first, suppose x is 1, first we check for x is 1 whether the statement is true. If that statement is true for x is 1, then we will say that for others also it is true. So they are saying initially first we will check for the base value, initial value. It is the proof that the statement is true for n is equal to 1 or some other starting value. Induction hypothesis. Now hypothesis, next step is hypothesis. It is the assumption that the statement is true for any value where n of n where n is greater than equal to 1. So they are saying we are hypothesizing that if we are saying that the statement is true for any value of n where n is greater than equal to 1. Now induction step: in this stage we make a proof that if the statement is true for n, it is must be true for n plus 1. So if we are saying if it is true for n, then it must be true for n plus 1 also. This is the next step. So like here, write a proof that the sum of the first n positive integers is n into n plus 1 divided by 2. So we have to prove that the sum of the positive integers is this, right? N into n plus 1 divided by 2. So we know that 1 plus 2 plus up to n is equal to n into n plus 1 by 2. This is the actual formula of summation, right? So through induction, how will we prove that? So base step is we will put the value of n, the initial value of n. So suppose we take the value for fn 1. So we must show that the given equation for is true for n is equal to 1. So we will put 1 here, 1, right? And 1 plus 1 upon 2, right? So here what, so 1 plus 1 is 2, and 2 into 1 is 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1, right? Here they have not written 1, but it is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, and 2 into 1 is 2 into 1 is 2, and 2 divided by 2 will be 1. So this is true. We proved that the first statement for is true for n is equal to 1. So base step is over. Now hypothesis. Now let us assume that the given equation is true for any value of n, that is n, any value of n greater than equal to 1. So now that is 1 plus 2 plus n is equal to n into n up n plus 1 by 2. So any value we take, so it will come out to be true. So induction step, now we have to prove that it is true for n plus 1, right? So suppose, yeah, here we are taking 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus up to n plus 1. So what we will do, instead of n, we will put here n plus 1, and here also n plus 1. Wherever there is n, we will put n plus 1 there. N plus 1 square brackets n plus 1 plus 1 divided by 2. So let us rewrite the above equation in the following way. So now your equation, you have added n plus 1 here. So your equation will be uh, n into n plus 1 by 2 plus n plus 1. So they have divided this. If we do that, if we do like this, n plus 1 is there, and then n plus 1 will be n plus 2. If we open the brackets, n plus 2 will be there, so it will be n plus 1 into n plus 2. And if we solve that, so it becomes n square. Okay, it will become n square here. N square plus n, sorry, it will become like this: n plus 1 into n plus 2 divided by 2. This is with what we will get. Rather than doing this, you just what you do is n plus 1, and there is square brackets, and inside the square bracket you have n plus 1 plus 1. So you open this bracket n plus 1, and you add plus 1 here, so it will become n plus 2, right? So your equation will come out to be n plus 1 into n plus 2 divided by 2, right? And then here, so what they have again differentiated it, that it is n plus 1, n plus 1 plus 1 divided by 2. So this and this are equal. This and this are equal. So what they are showing, that this and this are equal. So therefore, if the hypothesis is true for n, it must be true for n plus 1, which we proceed in the induction step. So they are saying that this answer comes by solving this only, right? So that is why they are saying it is true. So rather than doing like this, you can just simply solve this, so it will give you this. That is what they are talking about. Okay. According to this, what we have to do is, our hypothesis is this, that n into n plus 1 by 2 is the 1, and we have to show that for n plus 1 this is the answer if we add n plus 1. So we'll take this n into n plus 1 by 2, and we will add n plus 1 with this equation, this one. So when you add this n plus 1 with this one, so now the 2, if you add 2 to this, right? the denominator is also the full denomination is you are keeping as 2, so you have to multiply this 2 with this n plus 1 also. So here they are saying n into n plus 1 plus 2 into n plus 1 here. So it will come out to be n plus 1 into n plus 2 divided by 2, which you can also say that n plus 1 n plus 1 plus 1 divided by 2, which is just similar to this. This is what they are trying to say. This is how you solve it. So this is how they are saying you solve it. So now they are saying prove that for all positive integers n, 1 square plus 2 square up to n square is equal to n into n plus 1 and 2n plus 1 upon 6. So again you will first put n is equal to 1 and find out the result, right? If that is true, right, for n this that is true, then you will take the hypothesis that 1 plus 2 plus n is equal to this, the square is this, and then in the induction step you will say that if we add n plus 1, then the equation will be like this, and you keep this one and add n plus 1 and see that it results into this same equation. That is how you do it. This is how you do induction. This is what mathematical induction proofing is. That is what they are talking about, right? Then they are again talking about efficiency of an algorithm. So in order to understand the complexity or efficiency of an algorithm, it is very important to understand the notation of the size of an instance of the problem under consideration and the role of size in determining complexity of the solution. For example, finding the product of two 2 by 2 matrices will take much less time than the time taken by the same algorithm for multiplying, say, 200 by 100 matrices, right? Size. So 100 rows and 100 columns, and if 2 by 2 is there, that will take less time, and 100 by 100 will take more time. So this explains intuitively the notation of the size of an instance of a problem and also the role of the size in determining the time complexity of an algorithm. That means the size of the input matters, how much size you are giving to in the algorithm. So that will make the problem accordingly, that if the size is more, it will take more time. If the size is less, it will take less time. So if the size to be later considered formally of general instance is n, then time complexity of the algorithm solving the problem, not just the instance under consideration, is some function of n, right? So that is one thing. So in view of the above explanation, the notation of size of an instance of a problem plays an important role in determining the complexity of an algorithm for solving the problem under consideration. However, it is difficult to define precisely the concept of size in general for all problems that may be attempted for algorithmic solutions. So in some problems, number of bits is required in representing the size of an instance. However, for all types of problems, this does not serve properly the purpose for which the notation of size is taken into consideration. Hence, different measures of size of an instance of a problem are used for different types of problems. So let us take two examples. In sorting and searching problems, the number of elements which are to be sorted or are considered for searching is taken as the size of the instance of the problem or of searching and sorting, right? If it is searching and sorting, so how many number of elements you have to sort, and how many elements you have to search, that is your size of the instance. In the case of solving polynomial equations or while dealing with the algebra of polynomials, the degree of polynomial instances may be taken as the size of the corresponding instance. How many degrees are there, right? So that polynomial, that is the instance. To measure the efficiency of an algorithm, we will consider the theoretical approach and follow the following steps. So, calculation of time complexity of an algorithm mathematically determine the time needed by the algorithm for a general instance of size, may say n of the problem under consideration. So, in this approach, generally, each of the basic instructions like assignment, read and write, arithmetic operations, comparison operations are assigned some constant number of units of time for execution, right? So they are saying you have made a program, suppose, and say you have assigned some value, read you have read or written, or arithmetic operations are you have done, comparisons you have done in your program. So all are given some constant unit of time for execution. Time for looping statement will depend upon the number of times the loop execute. Right. Adding basic unit of time of all the instructions of an algorithm will give the total amount of time of the algorithm. So for all the instructions which you have taken for loops, for assignment, for whatever, if you take into consideration, then it will give you the total amount of time of the algorithm. So the approach does not depend on the programming language in which the algorithm is coded, and on how it is coded in the language as well. The computer system used for executing a program version of the algorithm. So, but different computers have different execution speeds. However, the speed of one computer is generally some constant multiple of the speed of the other. So instead of applying the algorithm to many different size instances, the approach can be applied for a general size, say n, of an arbitrary instance of the problem, but the size n may be arbitrarily large under consideration. So we take that. So an important consequence of the above discussion is that if the time taken by one machine is in executing a solution of a problem is a polynomial or exponential function in the size of the problem, then time taken by every machine is a polynomial or exponential function respectively in the size of the problem. So they are saying that we will take it as if in one machine the time taken is exponential or polynomial, then in other machine also it will take around this much time only, polynomial or exponential only. That is what they are trying to tell. Then they are talking about again the asymptotic analysis and notation. So we had seen earlier also. So asymptotic analysis is a more formal method for analyzing algorithmic efficiency. It is a mathematical tool to analyze the time and space complexity of an algorithm as a function of input size. For example, when analyzing the time complexity of any sorting algorithm, such as bubble sort, insertion sort, and selection sort, in the worst case scenario, we will be concerned with how long it takes as a function of the length of the input list. For example, we say the time complexity of standard sorting algorithm in the worst case takes Tn is equal to n square, where n is the size of the list. So in contrast, merge sort takes time Tn is equal to n into log 2n. So the asymptotic behavior of the function fn, such as fn is equal to c into n or fn is equal to c into n square, etc., refers to the growth of the function fn as n gets very large. So as your n gets very large, your according to your function, the function growth is there. So small values of n are not considered. The main concern in asymptotic analysis of function is in estimating how slow the program will be on large inputs. One should always remember the slower the asymptotic growth rate, the better the algorithm. The merge sort algorithm is better than sorting algorithm. Binary search algorithm is better than the linear search algorithm. A linear algorithm is always asymptotically better than a quadratic one. Remember to think of a very large input size when working with asymptotic rates of growth. Right. So, for example, let us consider the time complexities of two solutions of a problem having input size n as given below. T1n is equal to 1000 n square, T2n is equal to 5n to the power 4. These are the two complex. Despite the fact T1n is greater than equal to T2 greater than equal to T2n, for n less than equal to 14, we should still prefer the solution as T1n as the time complexity, because T1n is less than equal to T2n for all n greater than equal to 15. Right. So what they are saying is despite, if we see this is a 1000 n square, and T2 is 5n to the power 4. So what they are saying is, despite the fact that T1n is greater than T2n, right, for n less than equal to 14, we should still prefer that T1n. Why? As the time complexity, because T1n will be less than T2n, for all n greater than equal to 15. When your size increases, is greater than equal to 15, when your size increases, then your this will be less and this will be more. That is what they are trying to tell. Right. So again they are talking about the constant, logarithmic, linear, log, quadratic, cubic, polynomial, exponential, which we have seen earlier, the common orders of growth. seen. So that is what they are talking about. Then they are talking about worst case and average case analysis, which we had seen last time. Then they are talking about big O notation, big theta notation, omega notation, right? Upper bound is big O, right? That is your what is that? The worst case. Theta is your best case, and omega is your average case. So that is what they are talking about. We'll see them later on also, right? We'll see these things later on also. So here they have given you the check progress questions answers, so you can go through them, these answers also, right? And then in the next unit we'll go through them later on also. I'm just going through what complexity analysis of simple algorithms. So for simple algorithm they are doing the complexity analysis one by one. So here, if you see analysis of simple constructs or constant time. So first one was constant time O1, so time complexity of a function or set of statement is considered O1 if statements are simple statements like assignment, increment or decrement operation and declaration statement. There is no recursion, loop or call to any other function. Like here you are declaring, here you are assigning values. So these are your O1 time complexity functions, right? Then on, this is time running time of a single looping statement which includes comparing time, increment or decrement by some constant value looping statement, like for loop. For I is equal to 1, I less than equal to n, I plus is equal to c. So this is on running time, right? Linear running time will be the single loop, right? So you are initializing, you are checking the condition and incrementing, right? Then on to the power c, this is a running, or on square you can say. This is the running time of nested loops. So if you have nested loop, two loops, so time complexity of nested loop is equal to the number of times the innermost statement is executed. For example, the following sample loop has O(n) square time complexity. For first, this is the outer loop, then this is the inner loop. First, the inner loop will run, then the outer loop will run. So there are two loops. So your complexity becomes O(n) square in the worst case, right? Then O log n. If the loop index in any code fragment is divided or multiplied by a constant value, the time complexity of the code fragment is O log n. So here the increment, here you are multiplying. If you see here, the code fragment is divided or multiplied by a constant value here, divided or multiplied. Where you do increment or decrement, you are multiplying or dividing, then it will be O log n, right? So you are initializing, condition is there, and you are in increment decrement you are multiplying, and here you are dividing. So then in the loop index it is log n, O log n time complexity. Then time complexity of consecutive loops. So if the code fragment is having more than one loop, time complexity of the fragment is sum of time complexities with the individual loops. So if you see here, this is the first loop, then this is the second loop. You have two or more loops. Then your time complexity will be taken the sum of both the time complexities of these loops. So this is O1, suppose O theta 1 or theta 1 they have given. So time complexity, the above fragment is, this is the first one OM, this is the second one ON, which is OM plus N, sum of the two complexities. If one looping statement is consecutive if else statement, sorry, so that can also be considered, but here we are getting, then consecutive if else statement is there, right? The running time of the if else statement is just running time of the testing the condition plus the larger of the running time statement 1 or statement 2. So they are saying the if you have multiple if else statement, so the running time of if else statement is just running time of the testing the condition plus the larger the running time of statement, whether statement 1 is run or statement 2 is run, whichever is larger, taking the larger time. for running. That is the running time of that. So they have given you that analysis, that what, how, where, what will be O1, what will be On, where will be On square, O log n. So that kind of a thing they are showing, right? Then they are saying analysis of simple algorithms. So by default, it is big O running time, no consideration of low order terms, no consideration of constant value is there. So summation algorithm, suppose it is sigma I equal to 1 to n I cube. You are calculating the cube of a number, sum of the cubes of numbers. So here int sum of n cube, int n, they are created a so this should be a function name, sum of cube, right? So and you are passing a parameter n to the function, and you are saying int I temp result. You have created two variables. Temp result is equal to 0 for I is equal to 1, I less than equal to n, I plus plus. You are running the loop. Temp result is equal to temp result plus I into I. So if you have not initialized temp result to 0, you should it is initialized to 0. So your result will be 0 plus I into I into I. So I's first time is 1, right? So it will be 1, temp result will be 1, then next increment will be 2, so it becomes 8. So it will be 1 plus 8, then next will be 3, so 3 will be whatever n, up to n you have to do. So n can be 5, can be 4, whatever value can be. So next increment you will be 3, so it will be um, 8 plus 1 is 9 plus 9, 9 plus 9 will be 18, like that. So then you are returning the result after your loop has been completed. So if you see line number 1, right, this one, 2 unit of time required for declaration. So 2, because you are declaring two variables I and temp, so they are saying you are taking 2 unit of time. Then line number 2, 1 unit of time required for assignment. So 1 unit of time you have used for assignment. Then line number 3, the for loop has several unit cost, initializing cost for testing I less than equal to n, to n plus 1 unit cost, and cost of incrementing is 1 unit of cost. So how much will that be? They are saying you, for the for loop has several unit of cost. First is initializing, then cost for testing the condition. So they are saying it is n plus 1 unit cost, and cost of incrementing I is 1 unit of cost. So it will be n plus 1 plus n. So it will be 2n plus 2. Sorry, n plus 1, and yeah, here also 1. I don't think so. It will be 2n plus, it will be n plus 2, not 2n, it will be n plus 2, right? It will be n plus 2 because n plus 1 unit of cost is initializing and testing, and increment is 1. So n plus 2 it will be, n plus 1 will be 2. So line number 4 is now you are calculating. So 2 unit of time for multiplication, 1 unit for addition, and 1 unit of time for assignment operation in one cycle. So 2 and 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4. So therefore the total cost of this line is 4n. 4 units are required, 2 unit for multiplication, 1 unit for addition, and 1 unit for assignment, right? So 4n. And line number 5 is it will take 1 unit of time, overall cost will be, now overall cost how much it will be? So it is 4n plus n plus 2, 4n 2 3, 2 3 3 is there, then n plus 2 plus 3, 5, n plus 5 plus 4n, n plus 5 plus 4n. This has the constant number has come to 6. But how this is coming to 6? Mine is coming 5n plus 6, not 4n plus 6. Because how can it come 2n? They are just taking out the analysis on that for how much unit you will be initializing, for how much unit you are assigning, then how much unit you are taking for the loop for initializing condition and increment decrement, and then how much will be for calculation and assignment, and then returning the result. So what is the overall cost? That is what they are calculating, which is written as on. Right now a polynomial, they are now evaluating polynomial evaluation. The polynomial is an expression that contains more than two terms. A term comprises of a coefficient and an exponent. So px is equal to 15x to the power 4 plus 7x to the power 2 plus 9x plus 7. Or you can say px is equal to 14x to the power 4 plus 17x cube minus 12x square plus 13x plus 16. A polynomial may be represented in a form of array or structure. A structure representation of a polynomial contains two parts, coefficient and corresponding exponent. So coefficient and its exponent they are talking about. The following is the structure definition. So struct, they are creating a struct polynomial int coefficient int exponent. So they have created coefficient and exponent. How to evaluate the polynomial? It can be evaluated through brute force method and Horner's method. Let us try to understand through an example. Consider the polynomial. Suppose that exponentiation is implemented through multiplications. The processes of evaluation through both the methods are shown. So if you have brute force method, px is equal to 15x into x to the power 4 plus 17x cube plus 12 x square plus 13x plus 16. Right? In computers, it will be written like this: x into x into x into x to the power 4 will be written like this, x to the power cube will be written like this, right? So this is how you will write it. Horner's method, px is equal to 15 into x plus 17 into x minus 12 into x plus 13x plus 16. Please observe the basic operations of multiplication, addition and subtraction. Since the number of addition and subtractions are the same in both the solutions, we will consider the number of multiplications only in worst case analysis of both the methods, because they are saying multiplication takes more time, right? The general form of a polynomial of degree n and express our result in term of n, we will look at the worst case maximum number of multiplication to get an upper bound on the verb. So now consider the general form of a polynomial of degree n, an x to the power n, an minus 1 x to the power n minus 1 plus up to a1 x to the power 1, a0 x to the power 0, where a0, a1, an minus 1 to an are coefficients, and x to the power 0, x to the power 1, x to the power n minus 1 are related to exponents, and we have to evaluate polynomial at a specific value for x, right? So analysis of brute force method, a brute force approach to evaluate a polynomial is to evaluate all terms one by one. First, calculate x to the power n, multiply the value with the related coefficient. So first you will find x to the power n, then you will multiply with the coefficient. Repeat the same step for other terms and return the sum. Right. So in the first term, it will take n multiplications. Right. In the second term, n minus 1 multiplications. In the third term, it takes n minus 2 multiplications. And in the last two terms, uh, a2x and a takes 2 multiplication and 1 multiplication. So accordingly, right? So number of multiplications needed in the worst case is n into n minus 1 plus n minus 2 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1, like that. which will be n into n plus 1 divided by 2, which is O n square, right? So they are saying that it will take O n square complexity, Gauss complexity, to calculate according to brute force method. And then analysis of Horner's method, if this is your polynomial, in the first term it takes one multiplication, in the second term one multiplication, in the third term it takes one multiplication, similarly in all other terms it will take one multiplication. So analysis of number of multiplications needed in the worst cases, Tn is equal to sigma I is equal to 1 to n, will be n. So Tn is equal to n only. So here they are not considering the exponent part of it. They are just seeing the multiplication, because they have taken out x out of the brackets, right? And they are considering 1 unit for each time you are multiplying. 1 unit for each time you are multiplying, right? That is what they have considered. So they have taken this x to the power a x to the power how much n or 4 or how much they have taken out from the brackets, kept as a thing, and inside they have kept it like this to make it. That is what they have done. So only one time you are multiplying. So that is there. Instead, in brute force, what you are doing, first you are multiplying this the exponent, then you are multiplying with the coefficient, so it is taking n number of multiplications, then here it will take n minus 1, here it will take n minus 2, then 3 2 1, it will come out to be at the end. So that is what is there. So consider only the first term of the polynomial of degree n, a n x to the power n, to appreciate the efficiency of Horner's rule. Just computing this single term by the brute force algorithm would require n multiplication, whereas Horner's rule require only one multiplication in every term. Because they have, what they have done is Horner's in Horner's one, they are computing, because they are creating x outside the for making if you solve this equations, it will come out to be 15x to the power 4, 17x to the power cube, 12x to the power square, 13x. So it will come out to be like that if you solve the brackets, because x is outside from here. So this 15 will be x to the power 4 when you solve these brackets. So for Horner's rule, it is this method. So that's why you are multiplying once only every time in this, right? So they have given you pseudocode for polynomial evaluation using Horner's method. Horner A n x. In this, poly is an array of n elements which are coefficient of polynomial of degree n. Assign value of poly Pn, coefficient of nth term in the polynomial. Set I is equal to n minus 1. Compute P is equal to P into x plus poly I is equal to I minus 1. If I is greater than or equal to 0, go to step 4. Again, then compute here. Find the polynomial value at x is P. If this is the example, 3x square plus 5x plus 6. So at x is equal to 3, px will be equal to 3x, px plus 5, x plus 6. 3x plus 5 will be 3 into 3, 9 plus 5 into 3 plus 6. So you first have to put this equation into Horner's method. In Horner's method, it will take out x outside, right? It will take out common x outside. So inside the bracket will remain 3x plus 5, and x will be outside like this, plus 6. So now if you solve it by Horner's method, so if you put the value of x as 3, So it will become 3 into 3, 9 plus 5 into x is 3 plus 6. So 9 plus 5 will be 14 into 3 plus 6. So it will be 42 plus 6 and then it will become 48. So 1, 2, 2 times it is multiplying basically. That is what they are trying to tell. This is the program they are say, saying that evaluate Honor, and they are passing parameters a, n, and x here. A is, I think, the array. N is the number of indexes in the array, I think, or x is the exponent, I think. So a must be the coefficient, I think. So we'll see this program in I'll be having the program also. We have matrix multiplication also. The matrix multiplication, so I think uh, you know that how to do matrix multiplication, right? Program for that. So like here they everybody knows the program. Everybody knows C on anybody knows C programming, C plus plus, any programs. Anybody knows that how to do programming class? Anybody knows programming? No.
Yes, ma'am.
Those who are computer background, they must be knowing about the how to do programming. So what is a matrix? Can anybody tell me what is a matrix? Those who have studied maths in 10 plus 2, they must be knowing what is matrix. No.
A matrix is a group of element.
Yeah, it is a collection of rows and columns. Yes or no?
Rows or column, yeah, ma'am.
Yes. So matrix is considered as row and column format. तो हम जब भी matrix को लिखते हैं, we say 2 by 2 matrix, right? Like this, or 2 by 3 matrix, whatever. So what is 2 by 2, 2 by 3, 2 by 4, जो भी हम लिखें now. So first one is your row and second one is your
column.
column size, row size and column size. That means अगर ये 2 by 2 matrix है, तो suppose the matrix values मैं दे रही हूँ 1, 2, 3, 4 is how many rows are there, how many columns are there?
Ma'am, 2 and 2.
2 rows and 2 columns, right? So this is how we define a matrix. Where matrix is a collection of rows and columns. और जब भी आपको मैट्रिक्स को डील करना है प्रोग्रामिंग में, तो प्रोग्रामिंग में मैट्रिक्स को डील करने के लिए हम नेस्टेड लूप्स का यूज करते हैं. ठीक है, नेस्टेड लूप्स का यूज करते हैं. तो एक लूप हम चलाएंगे रो के लिए, लूप फॉर रो, और दूसरा लूप हम चलाएंगे किसके लिए, कॉलम के लिए. समझ में आया?
Yes,
दो
ma'am.
लूप्स चला रहे हैं. लूप्स क्या होते हैं? लूप्स आर, दोज हु डोंट नो अबाउट लूप्स आर यूज्ड क्या, जहाँ पे हमें रेपिटेटिव चीजें करनी हो, हम लूप्स का यूज करते हैं. कुछ स्टेटमेंट्स को हमें रिपीटेडली रन करवाना है, तब हम लूप्स का यूज करते हैं. तो सी में लूप्स, हम जो नेस्टेड लूप्स के लिए सी में यूज करते हैं वो फॉर लूप है ज्यादातर. फॉर हम फॉर लूप का सिंटैक्स मैं बता रही हूँ. यहाँ पे पहला होता है इनिशियलाइजेशन, तो हमने इनिशियलाइज कर दिया. फिर होता है कंडीशन, वॉट एवर कंडीशन यू आर गिविंग, एंड फिर होता है इंक्रीमेंट या डिक्रीमेंट, राइट? तो फर्स्ट पार्ट इज योर इनिशियलाइजेशन, सेमीकोलन कंडीशन चेकिंग, सेमीकोलन इंक्रीमेंट, वन इंक्रीमेंट और डिक्रीमेंट, वॉट एवर यू वॉन्ट टू डू, राइट? ये आपका फॉर लूप का सिंटैक्स. अब आपको अगर मैट्रिक्स का प्रोग्राम बनाना है, तो सबसे पहले मैट्रिक्स आपने डिक्लेयर करना है. तो यहाँ पे डिक्लेयर करने के लिए हम इंटीजर, अगर सी में डिक्लेयर करना होता है तो इंट कीवर्ड है इंटीजर के लिए, अगर इंटीजर मैट्रिक्स है. और हम क्या कहते हैं, ए, और हम साइज दे देते हैं रो और कॉलम का. यस और नो?
Yes, ma'am. Two, two.
Yes, ma'am.
ऐसे। तो ये क्या हो गया 2 2। इसका मतलब है ये एक मैट्रिक्स है ऑफ रो 2
Two rows
कॉलम 2।
and two columns.
ठीक है। ऐसे ही एक और मैट्रिक्स अगर मैं क्रिएट कर दूं तो ये क्या हो गया, एक और मैट्रिक्स बी है जिसमें भी रो साइज 2 है, कॉलम साइज 2 है। एक और मैट्रिक्स ले लूं तो ये हो गया थर्ड मैट्रिक्स है सी, जिसका साइज 2 है और रो 2 है, कॉलम भी 2 है। अब आपको पता है ना व्हाट इज द रूल फॉर एडिंग। एडिंग का क्या रूल है मैट्रिक्स में? एडिशन करने के लिए अगर दो मैट्रिक्स को ऐड करना है तो मेरे दोनों मैट्रिक्स क्या होने चाहिए, साइज रो और कॉलम
सेम ऑर्डर के होने चाहिए, सेम
इक्वल
रोज
होने चाहिए।
और कॉलम्स होने
सपोज
चाहिए।
मेरा दूसरा ये है, दूसरा मेरा ये मैंने एरे लिया है, एक है 1 2, दूसरा है, ठीक है, ये दूसरा मैट्रिक्स है 4 5 7 9 एक मैट्रिक्स है, 1 2 3 4 एक मैट्रिक्स है। तो इनका सम क्या आएगा? इनका सम अगर मैं कर दूं तो क्या आएगा? इनका सम क्या आना चाहिए? तो ऐड द कॉलम्स, ऐड द रो और कॉलम आइटम्स, तो 1 प्लस 4 होएगा,
यस मैम 5
5 और 2 प्लस 5 होगा 7
मैम 7
and
और
10.
यहाँ पे आ जाएगा 3
10
प्लस
10
7 10
13.
राइट,
13
और यहाँ आ जाएगा 30। इस तरह से 1 will be added with the first row first column 4 and फिर first row second column will be added with the first row second column of B, second row first column of A is added with first row second row first column of B, then second row second column will be added with second row second column of B, like that. तो आपका दोनों ए और बी दोनों इक्वल साइज हो सकते हैं, तभी आपका ये एडिशन हो सकता है, फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट, ये याद रखना। तो आप वैल्यूज डालोगे तो यहाँ पे जो प्रोग्राम उन्होंने बताया हुआ है, आपने दो मैट्रिक्स लेने हैं n बाय n मैट्रिसेस ए और बी, और तीसरा मैट्रिक्स सी लेना है जिसके अंदर आप मल्टीप्लाई करो। इसमें मल्टीप्लिकेशन की बात हो रही है, नॉट स्क्वायर सम की बात हो रही है। तो याद रखो मल्टीप्लिकेशन इज नॉट डन लाइक एडिशन। अब मल्टीप्लिकेशन का क्या रूल है? मल्टीप्लिकेशन का रूल पता है किसी को?
पहले
Row by
मैं
column. Number of columns in first matrix equal to number of rows in second matrix.
यस। सो वहां पे अगर आप मल्टीप्लिकेशन की बात करोगे तो अगर आपका एक 2 by 2 मैट्रिक्स है और दूसरा मैट्रिक्स आपका 2 by 3 है, तो ये मल्टीप्लाई हो जाएंगे, क्योंकि रो
यस मैम
कॉलम ऑफ फर्स्ट मैट्रिक्स शुड बी इक्वल टू रो ऑफ सेकंड मैट्रिक्स। तो कॉलम इसका कितना है? कॉलम इसका कितना है? फर्स्ट वाले का 2 और रो सेकंड वाले का कितना है? 2। तो ये मल्टीप्लाई हो सकते हैं। और ये कितने का जो थर्ड मैट्रिक्स होगा, जो फाइनल रिजल्ट आएगा, कितना मैट्रिक्स होगा उसका साइज?
2 by 3.
2 by 3, राइट। तो अब मल्टीप्लाई करने का रूल तो यही है कि आपका जो कॉलम फर्स्ट मैट्रिक्स का है वो रो सेकंड मैट्रिक्स के इक्वल होना चाहिए, तभी ये मल्टीप्लाई हो सकता है। इसमें ये रूल होता है, तो वो चीज आपको पता होनी चाहिए। तो अगर आपको मल्टीप्लाई करना है, आपने इनपुट ले लिया, ए में बी में भी इनपुट ले लिया, अब आपको जब लूप चलाना है तो आपको एक लूप 3 लूप, यहाँ पे 3 लूप्स लगेंगे, 2 नहीं 3, क्योंकि आपको पता है जब हम मल्टीप्लाई करते हैं दो वैल्यूज को तो हम किस तरह से मल्टीप्लाई करते हैं। अगर मैं इसको मल्टीप्लाई करूं rather than addition, if we multiply them what will happen?
1 into 4 plus 2 into 7 पहला एलिमेंट बनेगा।
हाँ, तो यहाँ पे अगर मैं मल्टीप्लाई की बात करूं तो यहाँ पे हमारा जो पहला एलिमेंट है वो होगा 1 मल्टीप्लाइड बाय
4
1 into 4 plus
plus 2 into
1
7.
1 into 7.
2 into
This
7.
will be the first. Sorry, 2 into 7. Sorry. 2 into 7. ठीक है, this will be the first element. और second element होगा
1 into 5 plus
1
2
into
into 9.
5. 1 into 5 plus 2 into
2
9.
into 9.
ठीक है, इस तरह से
Yes.
मल्टीप्लाई होता है इसमें. ऐसे ही अगर मैं सेकंड वाले की यहाँ ये वाले की बात करूं, ये होगा 3 into 4 plus 4 into 7.
4 into 7, yes.
3 into 4 plus 4 into 7. सो ये चीज करने के लिए मुझे 3 लूप्स की जरूरत पड़ेगी. अगर इस तरह से मुझे मल्टीप्लाई करना है तो आई नीड 3 लूप्स. सो इफ यू सी हियर, ये पहला आउटर लूप जो है, ये आउटर लूप एक लूप है, फिर उसके बाद जे वाला दूसरा लूप है, और ये के वाला तीसरा लूप है. दिख रहा है? राइट. आई रिक्वायर 3 लूप्स. तो यहाँ पे अगर आप देखो, फॉर आई इज इक्वल टू 0 to n-1, इन्होंने फॉर ऐसे दिखाया हुआ है. आपको ऐसे नहीं चलाना है, आपको ये लिखना पड़ेगा फॉर आई इज इक्वल, अगर सी के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से बोलूं, फॉर आई इज इक्वल टू 0, आई लेस देन इक्वल टू n की वैल्यू ऑफ जो भी नंबर ऑफ रोज एंड कॉलम्स आप ले रहे हो अकॉर्डिंग टू दैट. तो एंड फॉर j इज इक्वल टू दिस. आपने सी आई जे क्या है आपका, रो एंड कॉलम इज इक्वल टू इनिशियली 0 रखना है, यानी सी जो मैट्रिक्स सी है वो इनिशियली 0 है, उसको असाइन करना है. एंड फॉर के इज इक्वल टू 0 to n-1 whatever the value will be. तो सी आई जे विल बी इक्वल टू, थर्ड लूप लगाने के बाद आपने कहना है सी आई जे विल बी इक्वल टू सी आई जे प्लस ए आई के इंटू बी के जे. ए का ए मैट्रिक्स का आई वाला लेना है और इनटू ये के की वैल्यू, ए आई के का पोजीशन इनटू बी के जे. तो बी का जो एक के लेना है और दूसरा जे लेना है पोजीशन. इस तरह से मल्टीप्लिकेशन में, मतलब अगर आप मल्टीप्लाई करोगे प्रोग्रामिंग पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से तो ऐसे लेना है. तो ये इन्होंने इस तरह बताया हुआ है कि C11 पे क्या वैल्यू मल्टीप्लाई हो रही है, C12 पे क्या वैल्यू हो रही है, C13 पे क्या वैल्यू मल्टीप्लाई हो रही है. इस तरह से. राइट. ये मैट्रिक्स मल्टीप्लिकेशन है ना. So multiplying first row, first element of first matrix with first column, first element of second matrix. Yes or no? This is how you do.
Yes.
Similarly,
Yes, yes.
perform this multiplication for first row of first matrix and first column of second matrix. Now take the sum of these values. The sum obtained will be first element of product C, matrix C. Similarly, compute all remaining elements of products matrix C. So this is how you are calculating the matrix multiplication, right? So ये वो calculate करके आपको बता रहा है कि किस तरह calculate किया है. वैसे हम प्रोग्राम देख भी सकते हैं उसके अंदर. तो यहाँ पे ये कह रहा है complexity analysis अगर आप इस algorithm का करो तो first step is for loop that will be executed n number of times, that is it will take on time. The second nested for loop will also run for n number of time and will take on time. ठीक है. First loop is taking on time, second loop is also taking on time. Now assignment statement inside second for loop will take constant on as it includes only one assignment. The third for loop, that is innermost nested loop, will take also run for n number of times and will take on time. Assignment statement inside the third for loop will cost O1 as it includes one multiplication, one addition, one assignment will take constant time. Hence, total time complexity of the algorithm will be On cube, because On and On, 3 Ons are there. So how many On cube for matrix multiplication of order n into n? This is how they are finding out, right? Just they are giving you example how they are calculating the complexity of the algorithm, right? Now what they are doing is So here they are saying write a program in C to find multiplication of two matrices. So if you want to see the, you can go for any, you can go for online compiler, or you just say a C program for. So you can see any program which is there. We'll see in programs only. So if you see here, so we'll talk about multidimensional arrays only. Where is that? Okay. So here, this is in C++. We have just see what is it in. So in C, if you see here, so they have declared. So here they have first declared that R1, R2, C1, C2, that the column row 1 on column 1 of one matrix will be 2 and 2, and row 2 and column 2 of second matrix will be 2, 2. So they have taken they have declared constant values for R1, R2, C1, C2, right? And then where is the main? This is the function they have declared. So here in the void multimat, this is a function they have made. Int m1, they have taken the matrix 1, and the row they have left it, and column 1 they have c1 they have filled here. Int matrix 2, they again the row 1 is empty size, and c2 is filled here, and int result also c2 is filled here, right? Because c2 will be there, but the row 1 or row 2 will be seen what has to be filled. So they have just kept it empty, and here they are applying the if c1 is not equal to r2. So now we have to check that column 1 of first matrix is equal to row 2 of second matrix, right? Column is equal to the row of column of first matrix is equal to the row of second matrix. If it is not equal, then you will say you can invalid input, or you cannot multiply the matrix. If they are equal, then you come here in the for loop. First you take nested for loops for I is equal to 0, I less than r1, I plus plus. For int j is equal to 0, j less than c2, j plus plus. So r1 and c2, you are seeing the column and rows. Your result, or the final result matrix, is you have initialized to 0, and you are saying for k is equal to 0, k less than c1, k plus plus. The third matrix, the third for loop, you are saying result ij is plus is equal to m1 ik into m2 kj. And in the main function, this is a function which is multiplying the matrix, and in the main you have given that m1 r1 c1 have values this. You are declaring the matrices, and m2 matrix with R2 and C2 as the row and column. The values are these, and the result matrix you have declared here, and you are calling the multiply matrix function where you are passing M1, M2 and result. So M1, M2 and result are passed here. So they are passed here, and then you are printing the result here. So again, 2 for loops will be needed for printing the result. So this is what they have, the program they are telling you to make. So this is one thing, right? Then exponent evaluation they are talking about now. So let us see. So exponent evaluation means, exponent means what? The power. Exponent tells us how many times to multiply the base by itself. So raising a to the power, that means if you have a to the power 4 to, like here they have 4 to the power 11, right? So they are saying you can do 4 to the power 10, 11, whatever numbers you are saying. So here they have divided it like this: 4 to the power 8 into 4 to the power 2 into 4 to the power 1. 10, 11 and 2. They have divided the 11 part. Eight and 2 will be 10, and 10 and 1 will be 11. So they have divided it like this: 4 to the power 8 into 4 to the power 2 into 4 to the power 1. Since the number of n has exactly log 2n plus 1 digit in base 2, we only need to perform log n multiplication. So they are saying that when you are doing this power exponent kind of a thing, then it takes all log n thing. So 4 to the power 1 will be 4, 4 to the power 2 will be 16, 4 to the power 4 will be 256, and 4 to the power 8 will be 65,536. So we don't require this 4 to the power 4. We will only have 4 to the power 1, 2 and 8. All these values, if we add up, we will get our answer. So the time complexity of this algorithm is log n. They are talking about. They are distributing the base. The 4 to the power 11 has been distributed and made like 4 to the power 8 into 4 to the power 2 into 4 to the power 1, which is making 4 to the power 11 actually. So you calculate 4 to the power 8. So 4 to the power 4 to the power 2, right? So square of 256, and the square of 4 to the power 2 to the power 2, that is 16 square will be 256. So that this one we will skip it because we don't require it, because we have to calculate. So therefore, to find the answer for 4 to the power, we only need to multiply 3 of them, skipping 4 to the power 4 because the corresponding bit in n is set to 0. So 4 to the power 11, 65 this into 16 into 4 you are doing, and the value you will get is this, the final value. So the time complexity of this algorithm is log n, to compute log n power of a, and then to do almost log n multiplication to get the final result for that. So they are saying that for these kinds of exponentiation calculations, it is always getting log n on the complexity. So here they are giving you one more example. So here they're saying pseudocode to compute a to the power n by left to right binary exponentiation method. an array A of size S with binary string equal to exponent n, where S is length of the binary string n, set result is equal to A, set I is equal to S into 2, compute the result is equal to result into result, S minus 2, I think, minus 2, result into result. If AI is equal to 1, then compute result is equal to result into A, I is equal to I minus 1, and if I is less than equal to 0, then go to step 4, return computed value as result. So how they are talking about is A to the power n you want to find, result is equal to A, for I is equal to S minus 2 to 0, string of length S, S minus 2 to 0, result is equal to result into I, result into result, sorry, A into A. If AI is equal to 1, then result is equal to result into A, result. How they are calculating this? Let us take an example to illustrate the above algorithm to compute A to the power 17. In this exponent, n is equal to 17, which is equal to binary number 10001. So step-by-step illustration of the left to right binary exponentiation algorithm for A to the power 17. S is equal to 5. Iteration 1, I is equal to 3. We have to see this by how this binary exponentiation they are doing. This is they have converted the this 17 exponent n is equal to 17, which is binary number this. If you convert 17, it comes to be binary number this. So it is 1 2 3 4 5 digits. So S is equal to 5 they have taken binary string, right? And result is equal to A they are saying, and here they are saying they are starting from I is equal to 3, because here you are saying I is equal to S minus 2. So 5 minus 2 will be 3, right? Starting from I is 3, result is equal to A into A. So result is equal to A into A you are doing. Result is equal to A, so it will be A into A, that is A square. Then your iteration is decrementing now. Is it incrementing or decrementing? You have to go to 0, they are saying. So that is it. That means it is decrementing. So next iteration you go to 2 after 3. So result is equal to a square into because now result is square, right? A square is now the result. So now again 3 to 0 we have to go. So it has become 2 to 0. So result into result will be a square into a square. Again then we will decrement. Next iteration is 1. I becomes 1, and now your result is a to the power 4. So now you will say again result into result, that is a to the power 4 into a to the power 4. Your result becomes a to the power 8, right? Your exponents are added if the base is same. Now again next iteration will be I is equal to 0. The decrement is done. So because you have to go from a s minus 2 to 0, so 0 will also be included. So now again result in this result, as result is a8, so it will be a8 into a8, which will be a16. And now your now your loop is ended, because now minus 1 will be there. So you have to go from s minus 2 to 0. So you have covered 0 also. Now you check if ai is equal to 1, right? Then result is equal to result into a, they are saying, and return the result. So now they are saying a0 is equal to 1, right? Result is equal to a16 into a to the power 1, or a simple a. So that means a is equal to a to the power 17. So it is not calculating as we calculate normally. It is calculating in a different format. This format or this algorithm is known as binary exponentiation algorithm. Left to right binary exponentiation, and there is also one more algorithm which is known as right to left binary exponentiation algorithm. So this is how binary exponentiation is done. Normally we are not calculating normally. If we do by brute force the normal calculation, so 1 by 1 how many multiplication we have to do? 17 times basically. So in this example, total number of multiplication is 5 instead of 16 multiplication in brute force algorithm, that is n minus 1. So this algorithm performs either 1 multiplication or 2 multiplication in each iteration of a for loop in line number 2 of the algorithm. Right. So hence the total number of multiplication in the algorithm for computing an will be in the range of s minus 1 less than equal to the fn function, and less than equal to 2 s minus 1, where s is the length of the binary string equivalent to the exponent n, and f is the function that represent number of multiplication in terms of exponent n. So complexity of the algorithm will be O log 2n here, as n can be representation in binary by using maximum of s bits, that is n is equal to 2 to the power s, which further implies O log L log 2n. This is for binary exponentiation. So you have right to left also. Left to right is there, then right to left is also there. So right to left, you are starting from I is equal to 1. First you are calculating a into a, result into result, right? Then a square, then second iteration a square into a square, a to the power 4. Third iteration is a to the power 4 into a to the power 4 is a to the power 8. The fourth iteration is a to the power 8 is a to the power 16, and a4 is 1. So result will be a to the power 17. So this is right to left binary exponentiation. From 1 to the maximum you are going, that is right to left, and from maximum to 1, 0 or 1 you are going, that is left to right. That is what they are talking about. Again the same result they are talking about, that it is taking O log 2n. Both left to right and right to left, both are taking the O log 2n multiplication. Then they are talking about linear search or sequential search. Is very simple search algorithm which is used to search for a particular element in an array. Unlike binary search algorithm, in linear search algorithm, elements are not arranged in a particular order. So in this type of search, an element is searched in an array sequentially one by one. If a match is found, then that particular item is returned and the search process stops. Otherwise, the search continues till the end of an array. The following steps are used in the linear search algorithm. So here they are talking about your function is linear search, where you are passing an array and an element which you need to search. So initialize I to x. If I exceeds the end of an array, then print element not found and exit. If ai is equal to x, then print element x found at index I in the array and exit, and increment I and go to step 2 again and see if you are finding the element or not. So if you see the list of elements in an array 7, 17, 3, 9, 25, 80, this is a list. So first element, if you take it, first index element, then you and the element which you need to search, you compare both of them. If both are equal, ai and x are equal, right, you will say that the element is found. If they are not equal, you will go to the next index and check whether this element and this element are equal. If it is not equal, you go to the next until you find that element. If you do not find the element, you will say element not found. Right. So in the above table of data set, start at the first item or element in the list and compare with the key. If the key is not at the first position, then we move from the current item to the next item in the list sequentially until we find the what we are looking for or run out of items. The whole list of items is exhausted. If we run out of items or the list is exhausted, we can conclude that the item we were searching from the list is not present. The key is to be searched is 25 from the given data set. So 25 is here. So first this will be compared, then this will be compared, then this will be compared, then this will be compared, and here it will be found, your 25. So in the given data set, 25 is compared with first 7, they are not equal. Then again with compared with 17. So again, so like this, key is compared with element in the list till either element is found in the list or not found in the list of the end of the list. In case key element is found in the list and search is successful, so they have given you this algorithm here, linear search, a comma n comma key. So found is equal to false. First we are taking a boolean value variable, so we are keeping it as false first. For I is equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus. If ai is equal to key, found is equal to true and break, we will break. And if it is not found, we will go to the next index and compare it, next index and compare it. If it is found, it will be true and we will break out of the loop. So if I is equal to n, after the loop, we'll check if I is equal to n, found is equal to false, right? If your I becomes equal to n, right, that means your end of the list has occurred, so your found is false, right, and you have to return found. So if it returns true, that means your item has been found. If it returns false, that means item is not in the list. So for the complexity analysis of this algorithm, we will discuss the following cases: best case time analysis, worst case time analysis, average case time analysis. To analyze searching algorithms, we need to decide on a basic unit of computation. This is the common step that must be repeated in order to solve the problem. For searching, comparison operation is the key operation in the algorithm, so it makes sense to count the number of comparison performed. Each comparison may or may not discover the item we are looking for. If the item is not in the list, the only way to know it is to compare it against every item. So best case is if you find the key element as the first. So the best case, we will find the key in the first place we look at the beginning of the list. That is, the first comparison returns a match or return found as true. So that will be in this case the complexity will be O1, because only in one comparison we have found in the first comparison only we have found the item. Worst case will be if it is at the last. So in worst case, either we will find the key at the end of the list, or we may not find the key until the very last comparison. That means either you find it at the last position, or you do not find the key in any position. That will be known as worst case, which is ON. Complexity will be ON. And average case will be, on average, we will find the key about halfway in the list. That is, we will compare against n by 2 data items. However, there, as n gets larger, the coefficients, no matter what they are, become insignificant in our approximation. So the complexity of linear search is ON. So the average time depends on the probability that the key will be found in the collection. This is something that we not expect to know in the majority of cases. Thus, in this case, as in most others, estimation of average time is of little utility, because sometimes if we don't have that item, so we may not know that it will be in the middle or not, whether there is the item in the list or not. So basically, linear search algorithms have ON complexity, but the average case will not be any help to us, because in many cases we may not be knowing that the item is existing in the there, or it is in the middle or not. So we have no idea. So if the performance of the system is crucial, that it is part of a life critical system, then we must use the worst case in our design calculation and complexity analysis, as it tends to be best guaranteed performance. So what they are saying is, if we have to create a system which is a time critical system or life critical system, then we will take the worst case as our design calculation. This worst case one, ON. So item is present, best case is O1, worst case is ON, and average case is ON by 2, which is ON only. Item is not present, so best case is ON, worst case is ON, average case is ON. However, we will generally be most interested in the worst case time calculation, as worst case times can lead to guaranteed performance predictions. So they are saying you take worst case more often than average or best case, right? Then sorting algorithms are there. So sorting is the process of arranging a collection of data into either ascending or descending order. We know that. So you have internal sort, external sort. Internal sorts are the sorting algorithm in which the complete data set to be sorted is available in the computer main memory. And external sort techniques are used when the collection of complete data cannot reside in the main memory but must reside in the secondary storage, for example, on a disk. Right. So you have different kinds of sorting algorithms. So some of the internal sorting algorithms are bubble sort, where your data is available in the main memory. So you have bubble sort, insertion sort, and selection sort. So they are talking about the internal sorting algorithms. So bubble sort, it is the simplest sorting algorithm in which each pair of adjacent element is compared and exchanged if they are not in order. This algorithm is not recommended for use for a bigger size array, because its average and worst case complexity are of ON square, where n is the number of elements in an array. So this algorithm is known as bubble sort because the largest element in the given unsorted array bubbles up towards the last place in every cycle pass. So if you see here, this is a list of items you have. Now if you want to arrange these items, right, so first you are comparing 23 and 18. You have shifted 18 to and 23 here, 18 here, right, and your other list is this. Then 18, then you are comparing 23 with 15, so you have shifted 15 here, 23 here, right. Then you are comparing 23 and 37, they will not shift. Then you are comparing 37 and 8, so 8 will shift here, 37 will shift here. Then you will compare 11 and 37, 11 will shift here, 37 will come here, right. This is the first pass. Then second pass, again you compare now. So now 18 and 15, 15 is shifted here, 18 is here. Then 18 and 23, so it remains there only. Then 23 and 8, 8 is shifted, 23 is here. Then 23 and 11, so 11 shifts here, 23 comes here, and 37 is there. right? So now again your shifting is done. So 15 and 18 has already been done, 18 and 8 is already done, then 18 and 11 are shifted, so 11 shifts here, 18 and 8 shifts here, 18 comes here, 11 and 18 11 shifts here, 18 comes here, right? Then in third pass again you compare 15 and 8 comes here, 15 comes here, then 15 and 11 comes here, 15 comes here, and finally your then again 15 and 18 are compared, then 18 and 23 and 23 and 37. So final fifth pass is your final result. So in this, the given list is divided into two sublists, sorted and unsorted. The largest element is bubbled from the unsorted list to the sorted sublist. After each iteration or pass size of unsorted keep on decreasing, and size of sorted sublist gets on increasing till all the elements of the list comes in the sorted list. With the list of n elements, n minus 1 pass iteration are required to sort. So that is what they are talking about. So they are saying that you will keep two lists. One is the unsorted list, the other one will be the list where you will keep on bubbling up and shifting your elements. That is what they are talking about. And again they have used two for loops here in the bubble sort. For I is equal to 1 to n minus 1 and j is equal to 0 to n minus 2, and if aj is greater than aj plus 1, so swap the values aj comma aj plus 1, exchange them, swap the values, right, and go to the next one, compare it, and then go to the next one. And if your inner loops is closed, then you go to the outer loop again, right, and then you this is first inner loop, you are after the outer loop you go to the inner loop and compare, and then it is complete, then again you go to the outer loop and increment, and then you start comparing with the in the inner loop, and again in the next pass again the outer loop is incremented. So this way your loops are working, comparing and exchanging the values. That is what bubble sort does. So we will perform the worst case analysis of the algorithm. Assume that in the worst case scenario, the exchange operation inside the loop will take constant amount of time, O1. There are two loops in the algorithm. Both the outer and inner loop will execute n minus 1 times. Therefore, the total running time Tn will be Tn is equal to n minus 1 into C, constant time required for simple statement like exchange. So Tn will be Cn square minus 2Cn plus 1. So they have multiplied this C with the n minus 1, right? So if the worst time big O complexity of the algorithm is expressed in polynomial expression, we consider first the highest order in the expression and do not consider the constant value in the final value. Therefore, Tn is equal to On square. So that is what they are talking about. So let us reanalyze the above algorithm, improve the running time. So they are improving the running time of the algorithm. So from the example, it is visible that the bubble sort algorithm divides the array into unsorted and sorted sub-arrays. The inner loop rescans the sorted sub-array in each cycle, although there will not be any exchange of adjacent elements. The modified version of the algorithm overcomes this problem. So here, again the same thing is given here. There will be no change in the number of iterations, n minus 2 iterations in the first pass, but in the second pass it will be n minus 3, right? Because here they have given n minus I minus 1. In the third it will be n minus 4 iterations and so on. In this case too, the complexity remains to be On square, but the number of exchange operations will be less. This requires further improvement of the algorithm. So they have given like that, right? So they are saying that in this they have again modified this algorithm. In some cases there is no need of running n minus 1 passes in the outer loop. The array might be sorted in less than that. The following is the modified version they are saying. So they are saying I is equal to 1 to n minus 1 and j is equal to 0 to n minus I minus 1. And they have set a flag also. So in case there is no swapping, flag will remain set to 0 and algorithm will stop running. So in the modified algorithm, the inner loop will execute at least once to verify that the array is sorted, but not n minus I minus 1 times. Therefore, time complexity will be C into n minus 1, that is ON. So they are saying you can improve the solution again to find out the best solution of the algorithm. So we will find out. There is another topic which is solving recurrences. We will do in the next class, right? But we just go through the complexity of this analysis of algorithm. There are some algorithm which is compared with the log n time and all that. So just go through them. We will talk about the binomial exponentiation and other examples which are given in the practical sessions also. When our practical sessions will be there, we will talk about them also. So you can go through them, right? So anything you need to ask or any doubts again today? Anybody has any doubts? Class? Anybody has any doubt, please?
No, ma'am. No.
Yesterday's questions, anybody has any other question about the course or anything? Your questions were too much yesterday. Anybody has questions? So should we end the class today?
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Make sure आप लोगों ने अपना एग्जामिनेशन फॉर्म भरा है कि नहीं भरा है?
Yes, ma'am. भर दिया.
Yes, ma'am.
Those who don't want to fill, they can apply for the examination in the next semester. तो नेक्स्ट सेमेस्टर में अपना एग्जामिनेशन फॉर्म, लेकिन उस सेमेस्टर में अगर वो दोनों को कंबाइन करके आपको देना पड़ेगा. सेकंड एंड अगर आप देना चाहते हो तो दोनों को, सेकंड और फर्स्ट दोनों के सब्जेक्ट्स आपको कोर्स कोड्स आपको अप्लाई करने चाहिए, फर्स्ट सेमेस्टर के भी सेकंड सेमेस्टर के भी, वरना लटकता चला जाएगा.
फर्स्ट सेमेस्टर क्या है, बैक शो होगा ना फिर?
बैक तो होगा, लेकिन बैक का ये मतलब यहाँ पे इग्नू में क्या है, आपको फैसिलिटी दी है. फॉर सम और द अदर रीजन, इफ यू आर नॉट एबल टू गिव द एग्जामिनेशन, यू कैन गिव इट इन द नेक्स्ट सेमेस्टर, राइट? अगर आप फेल भी हो जाते हो तब भी आप नेक्स्ट सेमेस्टर में जाते ही जाते हो, और आप फिर फर्स्ट सेमेस्टर का में फिर किसी सब्जेक्ट में फेल हुआ है तो सेकंड सेमेस्टर में उसे दोबारा भर के दे सकते हो. ठीक है, बट ये है कि आपको अगर आप बिल्कुल कोई भी एक भी पेपर नहीं दे रहे हो, जैसे अगर आपको जो पेपर मुश्किल लग रहा है, जैसे सपोज डिजाइन एनालिसिस ऑफ एल्गोरिथम मुश्किल लग रहा है, या व्हाटएवर पेपर यू आर फाइंडिंग इट डिफिकल्ट टू गिव, देयर आर 2 पेपर्स जो आप दे सकते हो. जैसे प्रोफेशनल स्किल वाला पेपर है, वो इन कम्युनिकेशन एंड प्रोफेशनल स्किल्स वाला पेपर है, आप दे सकते हो. वो मेरे ख्याल से 50 मार्क्स का पेपर है. तो अगर आप सारे नहीं देना चाहते, एटलीस्ट 2 और 3 तो आप दे दो. फिर आपका साइबर सिक्योरिटी भी ज़्यादा मुश्किल पेपर नहीं है, वो भी आप दे सकते हो. अगर आप सारे पेपर नहीं भरना चाहते, कुछ पेपर भर दो, और बाकी पेपर्स आप नेक्स्ट सेमेस्टर में सेकंड सेमेस्टर के पेपर्स के साथ दे देना. आपको ये याद रखना है कि आपको कोर्स कोड पता होनी चाहिए, गलत कोर्स कोड मत सेलेक्ट करना. अभी फर्स्ट सेमेस्टर में तो आपके लिमिटेड कोर्स कोड आएंगे, जब सेकेंड सेमेस्टर में आप चले जाओगे तो आपके फर्स्ट सेमेस्टर के कोर्स कोड भी होंगे, सेकेंड सेमेस्टर के कोर्स कोड भी होंगे. तो आपको सेलेक्ट करना है कौन से कोर्स कोड्स आपको अप्लाई करने हैं, राइट, एग्जामिनेशन फॉर्म में. बाकी प्रैक्टिकल में जो ओडीएल मोड के स्टूडेंट्स हैं, उनका प्रैक्टिकल सेंटर पे होगा, उसकी डेट शीट अलग से आएगी, थ्योरी एग्जामिनेशन के साथ नहीं होता है. तो उनका तो सेंटर पे होगा, आपको कंप्यूटर प्रोवाइड किया जाएगा और उसके ऊपर आपको प्रोग्राम बनाना होगा। और जो ओएल मोड के स्टूडेंट्स हैं, एमसीए ओएल वाले, उनका ऑनलाइन मोड में प्रैक्टिकल होगा एंड दैट विल बी वाइवा बेस्ड प्रैक्टिकल। और मतलब आपको एक ईमेल आएगा और आपका ईमेल पे आपको शेड्यूल दिया जाएगा कि आपको गूगल मीट या जिसके थ्रू भी आपको ज्वाइन करना है, और तब वो आपका वाइवा लेंगे।
मैम ओडीएल वालों का प्रैक्टिकल एग्जामिनेशन सेंटर पे होगा या फिर स्टडी सेंटर पे?
सेंटर पे होगा, जो कि कंप्यूटर सेंटर होगा। वहाँ पे कोई सेंटर सेलेक्ट होगा जहाँ पे कंप्यूटर होते हैं, और वहाँ पे आपको एग्जाम देना होगा ओडीएल मोड को। आपको एक क्वेश्चन पेपर आएगा, ठीक है?
ओके मैम।
और क्वेश्चन पेपर में क्वेश्चन दिया होगा। अब जैसे कि फॉर एग्जांपल अगर मैं, आपके 2 प्रैक्टिकल पेपर्स हैं, एक है MCSL 216।
यस मैम, एंड MCSL 217।
यस, तो ऐसा क्वेश्चन पेपर होगा। देखो MCSL 216 सेट 1 ऐसा पेपर आएगा। द क्वेश्चन पेपर कंप्राइजिंग ऑफ 2 कंपल्सरी क्वेश्चन ईच ऑफ 20 मार्क्स। तो ये जो आपका 216 है ना, इसके 2 पार्ट है। एक है डिजाइन एंड एनालिसिस ऑफ एल्गोरिथम और दूसरा पार्ट है वेब डिजाइन लैब, ठीक है? तो इसमें जैसे ये पहला क्वेश्चन है, इम्प्लीमेंट फ्रैक्शनल नैपसैक एल्गोरिथम एंड फाइंड ऑप्टिमल रिजल्ट फॉर द प्रॉब्लम इंस्टेंस गिवन बिलो। और दूसरा है इम्प्लीमेंट मल्टीप्लिकेशन ऑफ 2 मैट्रिसेस एंड कैलकुलेट द फॉलोइंग, हाउ मेनी टाइम्स इनरमोस्ट एंड आउटरमोस्ट ग्रुप विल रन टोटल नंबर ऑफ मल्टीप्लिकेशन एंड एडिशन इन कंप्यूटिंग द मल्टीप्लिकेशन ऑफ गिवन मैट्रिक्स। और दूसरा तो वेब डिजाइन वाला लैब है, इसमें आपको ये वेबसाइट डिजाइन करना है, छोटा सा फॉर्म डिजाइन करना है बेसिकली। ये अलग है, आया समझ? तो ये आपको ऐसे है, इसमें इस तरह से क्वेश्चन पेपर आता है। जबकि ओएल मोड में क्वेश्चन पेपर नहीं होगा, वो वाइवा बेस्ड फॉर्मेट में लेंगे, तो ऑनलाइन मोड में होगा। आपको
तो मैम मैम ओडीएल वालों का भी वाइवा होता है?
हाँ, एग्जाम के साथ वाइवा भी वो लेगा, जो भी एग्जामिनर होगा वहाँ पे।
ओके मैम।
एनी अदर क्वेश्चन?
एक क्वेश्चन था अटेंडेंस रिलेटेड।
हाँ बोलो।
अटेंडेंस कितने परसेंटेज थ्योरी में चाहिए और कितने परसेंट प्रैक्टिकल में चाहिए?
थ्योरी में इट इज नॉट कंपल्शन, अटेंडेंस इज नॉट कंपल्शन, बट प्रैक्टिकल इज 70% अटेंडेंस। ठीक है? एनी अदर क्वेश्चन? किसी और कुछ क्वेश्चन है? सबने अपनी अटेंडेंस डाल दी है चैट बॉक्स में?
यस मैम।
Yes, ma'am. What happened? It has happened. So,
मैम एक पर्सनल क्वेश्चन था। आई जस्ट वांट टू बी एडिशनल क्लासेस कैन पॉसिबल, मतलब एनीबॉडी?
that तो you have to talk to the study center. आप स्टडी सेंटर पे बात कर सकते हो इस बारे में। एडिशनल क्लास क्या मतलब चाहिए आपको?
मतलब आई जस्ट वांट टू बी प्रैक्टिकल नॉलेज, नॉट टू बी फील। सॉरी,
काइंड ऑफ ट्यूशन you want to say?
yes, no, I just want to be every subject with the practical, like that the web designing software, this one AI intelligence or something like that.
अच्छा,
Means जैसे
subjects you are saying.
institute
So
Yeah,
that you talk
yes,
to
ma'am.
you talk to the study center. If you are nearer to the study center, you can go to the study center. They may be helping you in that.
Okay, thank you.
आपका जो भी स्टडी सेंटर है, if it is Merit, you can contact Merit, right? If you are in Delhi,
Right.
तो आप contact कर सकते हो स्टडी सेंटर। They may be having different courses, so you can contact them.
Yes, Thank you.
Any other question? So should we end the class today? We will meeting next Saturday now for the next class.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks.
Right?
Yes,
We will
ma'am.
be doing
Thank you, ma'am.
the different algorithms which are there. The next algorithms are there. The knapsack, the Dijktra, and other algorithms. So we will be talking about them in the next class. Right? Meanwhile, just go through the topics which we have done today and find out whatever doubts you are having, and also try to do your assignment. If you are having doubts in assignment, we'll try to solve them also. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay then. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.